Hey
Are we
guys,
started?
I'm here with Andrew, a fellow INFJ or IEI in Socionics, which is an INFp because the P and the J are flipped in Socionics, but it's way more complex than that. But we have an expert with us right now on the subject. His username is squareheart. Andrew, would you like to say a fun fact about yourself or introduce yourself to
Oh yeah,
anybody that's watching?
yeah, I'm Andrew, and I wouldn't say I'm exactly an expert. It's more like I specialize in a very particular thing. So there's a lot of people who know a lot more than me about like general socionics. But like, thanks for the compliment. I just don't want to put expectations too high. So like, I'll earn them. Like, let's just assume I'm down here.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, we'll play in the shadows and then you're gonna like pop up and surprise people.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so we're gonna actually, Andrew and I are gonna be working a lot in the future. I mean, this has been a long time coming. We first planned all this like in June.
hmm
Um, Actually, would you like to kind of talk about how I mean, before we get into, because I want to ask you like your childhood and stuff, but would you like to talk about kind of like our first interactions that we had?
Oh, sure. Well, I came across your video because you did something about socionics, and like every couple of months, I'll just see like what people have posted recently about socionics because that's what I'm into. Um, and just for people who haven't heard of it, it's very similar to Myers-Briggs, but it was developed in Russia. So I don't know much about the Myers-Briggs, but they're very similar ideas. So you can compare them. And I think I commented on a couple of your videos, and I was impressed by like the quality of people who were commenting and like the intellectual level that they're asking like real questions. And I was also impressed that like you were responding, and then you put out like a link to like all your social media and said anyone who wants to contact me, like you can do it in person. And I was like, oh God, like there's some like strange people on the internet, and I was like, I have to get to know you quickly before like you have a bad experience and decide that like you're done with that. And so I think that's why like I was like making an effort to like get to know you back in June. Um, yeah, how did we decide to do a socionics video? I don't remember actually. I have a pretty terrible memory. But yeah, that happened. So yeah, we're gonna do it. Um,
Well, I remember, um,
okay.
even though I don't remember everything, I do have a good memory about some things. And I remember because I was driving across the country
Oh yeah.
and we
Yeah,
were
okay. So
talking like what, 8 hours, 6 hours a day?
yeah, that's right, because you're moving from Seattle down to South Carolina.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I
And
was
and I
driving
think that was
from
like that was when I was like trying to message you like proactively, but I was like you were you were obviously very busy. And so I was like trying to walk that like delicate line between like being friendly but also like letting you have your own space. And I think that's why we ended up like doing a phone call because you're driving across the country and we talked a lot about a lot of stuff.
oh yeah.
Um yeah. So yeah, that's right. That is how we decided. And we were brainstorming because I think a lot of people who are into like personality like really want to get to know themselves. And I think socionics is a little more advanced and it gives you more detail. And I personally prefer it over the Myers-Briggs. And we were talking about how there weren't really any like good resources to get into it because it's a Russian theory. And so like you either have to like find like the obscure YouTube video or like read journal articles that have been translated and some of them is it's a machine translated it, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And we both had a similar experience where we like discovered socionics and seriously got into it and learned a whole lot and then uh kind of like tested it out on people that we know and came to the same conclusion, which is this is like there's really something happening and this is really cool. So yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, that was summed up really well because that is
hmm
indeed our first interactions, which is pretty intense because I mean we both learned a lot about each other and because we were talking like so it took me what 4 or 5 days to I think it was 5 days to drive across the country. And I was
Mhm.
talking to Andrew almost the entire time I was driving.
Not quite, but there's like a solid
A
2 days in there,
good
probably of
amount of
time.
time, though. A good amount.
Yeah.
It was a good amount. We talked at least, okay, so it was a 35-hour drive. So it wasn't maybe, okay, a large plurality. I would say at least close to, I would say at least 17 to 20 hours, I would say,
Okay, yeah.
between
Which is
the all of
cool,
the days.
which is cool that you can meet somebody who like lives like across the country and like have such a good conversation. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was stranger danger.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. No, that's okay. So,
yeah, and I heard about your bear dance that you do.
oh yeah, we don't really do it anymore because the guy who organized it moved to Boston. And also like we kind of like grew up a little, but you want me to explain what a bear dance is?
Sure, and then we'll get into the interview.
So actually, before I say this, we have since decided that maybe we should not have called it a bear dance because that is cultural appropriation. But like for historical sake, we'll just call it a bear dance. And the idea was me and some friends wanted an excuse to have like a dance. And it was around the beginning of spring, and we're like, hey, there's like a ritual where like some native tribes would like do a dance to wake up the bears from hibernation, and like we could do that. And so we would have them on top of parking garages, and kind of like that like wagon circle, like everyone would park their car in a circle, and some people would keep their headlights on, and one person would just like have their door open and like blasting music as loud as their stereo would go. And we do that like for sometimes a couple hours until the security is like, you kids get out of here. um and we would just like leave that time and like come back the next week, and it was really fun. Okay, so like a common question when you're taking a personality test is like, do you like parties? Like, I do not like frat parties, but goddamn, I love those bear dances, and I've met some of the coolest people. So like, I don't know how to answer those questions because I had such a positive experience. And like, we didn't really know how to dance, but we were like doing like, I don't know, like jump style and shuffle dances and just like generally having a good time. So yeah, I was really, like I said, like I met some really cool people through that. So the guy who put it on was an EIE, so in the Myers-Briggs that'd be an ENFJ. And I've noticed that like whenever I've met someone like that, they have the capacity to be like the heart of a community, which I think is so cool. So yeah, he's a great guy. Um, and I don't know if you also want me to just like start saying things that like interesting that I did in my life.
Well, I think we should take it back a little bit to when you were
Okay.
a child, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty.
Oh, okay. So, man, what was okay, so I don't know if this like is representative of my personality, but one of my earliest memories I had was when I was like 2 or 3 years old. My mom would take me to the zoo, and I'd want to get like a reaction out of the animals, and so I'd just like scream at them. And people, because I was so young, people thought it was cute, but like I feel like retroactively shameful that I did that. Um, anyway, like as a kid, I'd say like what kind of things do you want me to talk about?
Well, kind of describe how you were as a child, and kind of going into like this is something I ask everybody, but like describe how you were as a child, a teenager, and young adult.
Okay. So I was always like fairly social as a kid. Um, but I didn't like to be part of like large groups. Like I'd always like to have like one-on-one time with people. But I wouldn't want to hang out with like a bunch of people. And I guess I was fairly sensitive, and maybe something that was different from when I was a child, a teenager, and young adult was like my own personal space. When I was a kid, I was like very open. And then a few things happened that made me kind of like more standoffish. And then,
Puberty. Just
hmm?
kidding. Puberty.
Oh no, no,
I'm
it
just
was something else.
kidding.
I don't really want to go into it. But anyway, like, and then as like a young adult, like I rediscovered that um, like I'm a very affectionate person, I guess, and so that would be consistent with through all of that. I wasn't a very like rebellious child. Like I really believe that I had to like do what authority figures said, or like it was like a moral evil, and so I tried to do it for that reason. But I wasn't I wasn't afraid of breaking rules, and oh, this is hard. Uh, I think see, another thing is a lot of like my memories are in relation to other people that I'd have to sort of explain to understand like my reaction. Like my
You
father
can
was
go ahead.
liked to make a lot of rules. And that was basically how he interacted with me. Like if there was something that I wasn't doing the way that he wanted, he'd try to make a rule. Um, and then I would, because like I felt like it was the right thing to like follow what my parents told me. I'd follow what the rules they gave me, and then I would still end up finding a way to do whatever I wanted anyway. And this was very frustrating for my father. Um, and I think like especially since I was in middle school, even to this day, like I haven't had a great relationship with my father because uh, it's not that I'm trying to upset him, but like we naturally clash in that respect. Like he'll try to make something again like a rule, and like especially like once I hit puberty, it was like game over. Like it wasn't good. And I so I guess like another thing is I like to be independent, and like I'm not a rebellious person, but I think I do some unusual things that people can misinterpret as being rebellious. So is that what you're looking for?
Would you like to share?
Uh um well, again, I can't think of any like examples. Oh, except okay, like in terms of like an unusual thing, like when I was a young adult, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to go hitchhiking from Colorado, where I live, and that's the Colorado flag, to North Carolina. And like I had a blast doing it, but everyone I've met pretty much is sort of like, why would you do that? Like you're putting yourself in danger.
I remember
Um,
this story.
okay, yeah.
No, no, no,
So,
tell it. It's interesting, but
oh, okay. So, the reason I decided to do this was for two reasons. One, my friend Jonas, the guy who did the bear dances, had gone hitchhiking before, and he's an artist, and he was doing like a comic diary of his life. And he was going to go with one of our other friends. And then at the last minute, like his mom convinced him to like bail, and so then Jonas went and did it himself. And it was a really like interesting story that like he wrote down, but like in a lot of parts of it, he's like alone and he's like feeling really lonely and betrayed. And I was like, damn, like that would be so much better if he actually had a partner. And so I originally asked him if when he was going to move to the East Coast, if instead of taking a bus, like if he just wanted to hitchhike, and he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so that's what we did. I also like I've always wondered like what you should do about people who are homeless, because like I care about people who are on the streets, but also like a lot of people when I was growing up would say like don't give those people money because they're drug addicts. And if you do, you're really just like perpetuating a bad problem. And I was like, huh, well that makes sense, but like I don't really know, like I don't understand what it means to be homeless. And so part of it was an experiment to sort of like be able to understand what life like that was, because we didn't like stay in hotels, like we were sleeping under bridges. Um, we had some friends along the way, which was really nice. But yeah, it gave me a really interesting perspective on that sort of thing.
didn't you sleep under that bridge in Nashville?
Oh yeah, yeah. So
Um,
the coolest part of that trip was in Nashville. Uh, the downtown is cornered by a river, and so all the bridges that connect traffic from like the downtown area to across the river have to be like 100 or 200 feet up so that boats can go underneath. And we were like sophisticated hobos, and so we had brought like climbing equipment and ropes and stuff like that. And so we found uh like a service ladder that started like 20 feet up, and we're able to like wrap a rope around the bottom and then climb up to it and then climb all the way up to the catwalk that was underneath the bridge that went over the river. And we stayed there for 5 days. And it was like the most picturesque thing I've ever experienced. There were two giant I-beams on either side of us, so we couldn't see the city at night. But the catwalk floor was that like industrial metal grate material that you could look straight down like 200 feet and see the river below you. And I sleep on my belly. And so I remember like the first night I went to bed looking down at the river because all the lights from the downtown area were being reflected in like those ribbons, across water. And I was like, this is really cool, but I hope I don't fall off. And then I had that like sensation, that hypnotic jerk when you're falling asleep, where you feel like you've like slipped on a banana peel and you're falling back. And I thought I had died. And then after that night, like I didn't have any problems, and it was really cool. So, so I don't think so. Anyway, that this is relevant because this is an example of maybe something I do that other people wouldn't really want to do. So it's not that I'm like trying to be like different than other people, but I do things that I want, and I don't really care if it's how other people would traditionally do things. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I get that. I think, especially as children, I think we can seem. I mean, for me, I used to like really. I was kind of a rule follower as a child. Like, I didn't want to do things. Like, I didn't want to do bad things. And then when I got older, I was a little bit more rebellious. Even though, I'm pretty sure I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure you also haven't tried any like hardcore drugs or like any
No.
besides alcohol, right? Or no?
Well, and some marijuana.
Oh, well,
But
you are in
but
Colorado.
yeah,
So
yeah, not much. And it's something I don't actually really like it that much.
yeah.
So, um uh actually that's a good point. For most of my life, I have like been anti-drugs. Like even like if I have a cold, like I don't want to take acetaminophen to like help with like a headache. And uh I'm very sensitive to drugs. And so what is like very manageable for some people, I have like an overwhelming effect to. Like caffeine for me is like very intense. Um, so I actually started drinking coffee a year ago when I was having a 8 o'clock a.m. organic chemistry class. Like I needed to be awake for. But like it's a very like dramatic thing for me. And uh, okay, so actually something I could talk about. Um, when I was in middle school, uh, I was in like an accelerated program. But part of being in that accelerated program is you had to maintain a certain like grade point average across the semesters. And this is around the same time that again, I don't really want to go into this, but I had some very like difficult things I was going through, and it was distracting me from school. Um, and my parents believe that I had ADHD. And so, against my will, they put me on, they tried a couple ADHD medicines, and it was like the worst experience of my life. Like, I really did not work out well for me. And I only felt like I had to do it because I was a minor and I didn't have rights of my own. But I, I'm studying biology right now, biology pre-med. And one thing that uh, I'd like to be a physician assistant. And so, like, just like in regular med school, there are rotations in physician assistant school. So I think I'll wait till I'm at that point to decide like what I want to specialize in. But I would be very happy to work with children who are being prescribed hardcore medication, um, because I feel like if people had given me like more time to like understand the situation I was in, then that would not have happened. It was a very like negative thing for me. And if I could be like a gatekeeper to prevent that from happening to other people, like I'm not totally against drugs, but I feel like I trust nature and like my own psychology a lot. And when you start messing around with that, then you can feel things that are not actually real. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're like psychotic, like if you're schizophrenic, then maybe it's worth shutting down parts of your brain and altering your perception to live a manageable life. But I really believe that like at least like for me, like my instincts are my guide. And if I take any medication, it alters it in a way that I don't know if I can trust them anymore. So um maybe that's why, but I didn't think about it like that when I was a kid. I just knew that like I didn't want to risk it. Um I
Yeah.
also I don't see like a huge difference between drugs that are prescribed by doctors and street drugs, except maybe like the potential for abuse. But there's a lot of like pharmaceutical drugs that are just as intense as street drugs.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, so maybe another reason, I grew up with three foster kids. So I was the biological kid, with my sister, but these two were brothers from one family, and then I had a foster sister from another family. And both of their families lost custody because they were on drugs, and in like an extreme way. Like it's just ridiculous. And I guess I feel like if drugs can do that to normal people, like I'm no better than anyone. And I'm very skeptical about like taking that risk when I don't absolutely need to. Like if I broke my leg, then I would like to have some anesthetic, in the hospital because that would be terrible. But that's very dangerous. And if you don't have to do things, then I think that I'm willing to endure like more pain than most people, just to not
Yeah.
take that risk.
Oh, I mean, I agree. I will hold off taking medicine until the last very moment.
Hmm.
Um, I don't take pain medicine just because I know it's the same way with you. Even though I don't feel like I have an addictive personality,
Yeah,
like I can give up things pretty easily. But when it comes to drugs like that, it's like, especially like pain meds, people can get so addicted to pain medication and it can ruin their life. And I
exactly.
guess because my dad, I mean, I kind of grew up, well, with a combination of things. Like my mom originally went to school for nursing. She ended up dropping out of like her university, but so she went to school for nursing, and then my dad
Mhm.
went to school to be a pharmacist. He went all the way through, became a pharmacist, found it boring, and so he went back to school and became a doctor.
Yeah.
And he became emergency medicine. So my mom would make us watch like Intervention or like America's Most Wanted and like just like the very hardcore shows. So
Yeah.
we grew up kind of knowing about those things and how they can affect you. And also like my dad, who
Mhm.
sees it firsthand, like every single day in the ER, he sees some of the craziest people you wouldn't even believe, like the stories that he's told me. Um,
Yeah. And I don't know if you feel this way, but I sort of identify with everyone that I see. So if I see someone who is like very like addicted to drugs, destroying their family, like maybe about to die, then I think that like that could be me. Like all I have to do is make like a couple bad decisions and it will cascade into that sort of state. But in the flip side, like I can see successful people and say like if I just work hard and maybe I'm lucky, then I can end up like that. So I think
exactly.
every decision you make has a long-term consequence, and it's worth being careful because it's easy to prevent bad things from happening, but it's really hard to fix them like once you're in the grip of them, especially drug addiction. Um, Also, like with drugs, um, I think that the reason drugs work is they're accelerating parts of your natural neurology. pathways that you already have in your brain for a reason. Um, and then like, you know, you can take a drug that would like up your dopamine or serotonin or stuff like that. And again, as long as you're healthy, then your body keeps those systems in a natural equilibrium. And that's why you can trust them. It's sort of like it's the way that it's almost like your soul has adapted to living life like a good life. Um, and like it's worth going after things that feel rewarding because like in an existential level, sorry, at an existential level, like that really is telling you who you are. Um, and this is something that's much deeper than just like your understanding. Like I would say like philosophy is a much like more superficial level than your own neurochemistry. So regardless of like your philosophy, you can get addicted to drugs and be helpless. And so like I don't want to do anything that would mess that up.
Yeah.
And I feel like even if I felt like good feelings on drugs, they're not real feelings. Like they don't have meaning. I'm sort of like hacking my brain into feeling that way. And so I have the sensation of these positive feelings, but they're not meaningful. And but like it feels the same way to you. So it's really, really hard to, as a person, resist that. So I would rather just like stay away from it entirely.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that is like the main reason why I never got into anything. It's also, partly why I haven't tried like, you know, marijuana. And that's why also, I mean, even though I don't see anything wrong with it, I don't know. I'm just very like, that's something I'm a bit of a prude about, is like not doing certain things. And I used to be that way with alcohol as well.
Mhm.
My mom made me drink my first drink, like my first legal drink. She's like, "You're
Yeah.
gonna drink it. This bartender gave it to you for free. You're gonna drink it."
Yeah.
And I acted like a little shitto on my 21st birthday.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, I've also realized I have such a like I do not have a tolerance for alcohol, like, or like
Mhm.
caffeine does. I'm trying not to drink as much coffee and just drink a lot of water. Um
Yeah, something I noticed when I started drinking caffeine, I've never had just like general anxiety uh for no reason in my life. But when I drink caffeine, then sometimes I do feel anxious. And I have to remember like that's because I'm stimulating my fight and flight response. And I'm keeping myself in that basically day after day after day. And when you don't have a drive and you're not, so there's not anything that's like threatening you. I think that manifests, at least for me, as like just general anxiety. And for most people, it's probably something that's like very below the surface, like they don't even realize. But because that's sort of how I experience life, like it's fairly intense for me. So like I'll actually like just like a couple days ago, like I stopped drinking coffee for a couple days and then started again today. And that was like a nice break, you know.
yeah.
Like if you're at like such like a high level, like a state of readiness, like you need to be able to relax occasionally.
Well, I mean, that's partly, as you know, um, even though we're going to still be talking like during this next month because we have a lot to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be on social media at all. Like, I'm not going to be on YouTube, not even watching videos, which is crazy because, like, I don't remember, like, that's going to be the longest I've ever taken a break from YouTube. Like, not as, like, I mean, obviously, I haven't been doing this for that long, but there's YouTubers that I watch every single day.
Hmm.
And I'm just going to, like, not, do any of that. Not going to, like, reply, not going to check my YouTube email, none of
Hmm.
that. And that's like intense, but yeah, I think it's the same thing kind of. It's like kind of, I would say if I have a vice or an addiction, that would be kind of it. And I need to just, and I know a lot of people like our age or younger have like social media addictions.
Hmm.
um I
Yeah, well,
think
good for
it'll be
you.
good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also think that like I have a very dynamic mood and it's useful to like be able to like experience like high and low emotions, whereas like our society, it's easy to try to like stay in like a peak. Like for me, it's I have to go through that cycle. And so like if you've been like really overstimulated by like all this information and you've been very active, like yeah, you need a break. So good for you.
Yeah. See, I don't see it as that active, but then I look back on my YouTube timeline and I was
You're
like,
pretty
wait a second,
prolific.
I feel like I've been slacking. And then I look back
Yeah.
and I'm like, wait a second, I actually have been posting pretty
Yeah.
often.
I mean, you're putting out so much content, I can't watch it all. So,
Oh yeah, and I do not expect everybody to watch it all. I want
mhm,
to be a little bit more refined in the future. Like I definitely want to still do the interviews, but have it more of like a special treat in the future. There are
mhm,
people that I do have lined up for like in March and stuff, but
yeah.
also Mike Hart, kind of going back to when I was talking about my dad. So
Mhm,
he's 64 now. I don't remember when he actually became a doctor. He was in his 30s. I know that.
mhm,
But he actually, so Desert Storm, he was in Desert Storm as a medic as well. So after medical school, or maybe like basically he had medical school paid for by the army.
mhm.
I remember that. And he went to a really nice medical school. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Georgetown in Washington, D.C. That's where he went. And so it's a really great school. And yeah, but don't feel like you're old. 32 isn't old. You know,
Mhm.
in your 30s is not old. I mean, my dad was 38 when he had me. Well, my mom had me when she was 32. My dad was 38. My sister when my sister was born, my dad was 40. So
Mhm. Oh,
you
cool.
guys are,
Well, I'm
but
in my
anyway,
mid 20s. So by the time I'm done with like I'm almost done with this degree. I probably have a year left. And then after physician assistant school, then like that would be 4, maybe a little bit more years. So yeah, that's good to hear. I'm like you, like I've wanted to be married since I was like 12, and I'm pretty bummed that I'm not married yet. But I also
me
feel like
too,
yeah, I
Andrew.
feel like it's good that we live in like a more liberated society, but I definitely feel the pressure of being able to provide for a family. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
consider marrying somebody until I had like the economic position that I want. And that's one of the reasons I really like The Great Gatsby, because that's what Gatsby did. And then like it didn't work out for him. And of course, like he was trying to like relive and like get that thing back that he lost. But I don't have any sort of attachment, so I think it's gonna go all right for me. Like fingers crossed.
Yeah. I mean,
You
my
know,
biggest attachment that I have are my cats. Um,
yeah, that's no problem.
yeah, my kitty.
Mhm.
Well, they moved across the country, you know,
Yeah,
but
I
I
bet they
probably,
love that.
to be honest, I probably wouldn't be like, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, it's kind of sad, but like, I love Pumpkin. But I love him too much in the extent that one day, he's almost 17. He'll be 17 in July. There's going to be a point. I mean, he already has arthritis. That's like the only thing that's wrong with him. But I mean, he's doing great, everything like that. But I know that I really shouldn't move him around really anymore. He really likes this house.
Hmm.
Fleur, on the other hand, I can take. She does love Henry and she does love Pumpkin,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay, so going back to like me as a little kid, another thing I can remember is my dad explaining to me how the draft worked when I was like 5. And I was like, the government
Lottery
can make you
draft?
kill people. And so like he told me, and he was telling me this because he actually wanted to be in the army, but or not the army, the military. But he has really bad eyesight. He has like 2200 vision. Like it's
Whoa.
really bad. Like he's just barely able to drive as it is, with like really like intense glasses or contacts. Um, but like he wasn't able to join because of his eyesight. And then I got the idea, if I can destroy my eyesight, then I don't have to kill people. And so I remember like when I was 5 years old, we'd have a swing set in our backyard, and I would just like swing and I'd like try to stare at the sun, to like So I didn't have to kill people. But I also like I wasn't very motivated, so I'd like look at it for like a couple seconds and then it would hurt my eyes and I'd look away. So thank God. And I remember thinking like I have to do this as a kid because like I have a pure heart and when I grow up I'm going to be like everyone else who is willing to kill people. So like this is the only time I have to make this decision. So maybe
Oh
that
my gosh.
maybe that's like a better example of my early personality rather than like the zoo experience. But
I
I've
mean,
also like been fairly athletic. Like I haven't played on a lot of sports teams, but I live in Colorado, so there's all sorts of things to do, like hiking. I like to snowboard. When I was growing up, I was only allowed to ski because my dad had a coworker who an out of control snowboarder ran into him and broke his spine, and he's paraplegic. And so my dad's like, I can't let my son kill people. But I think that was a bit of an overreaction. Um, yeah, and in a weird way, like I was the black sheep of my family growing up because I was so athletic and everyone else was so not. So
well,
everyone in my immediate family is in the alpha quadra, which means in MBTI terms, my mom and my sister are ISFJs, and my dad is an INTP, which is the same as your dad.
yes. And I originally thought my mom was ISFJ, but then I
Hmm.
really like thought about it. Like actually my friend Ruth, who's also um, into socionics, she actually helped me with this because she also knows my mom.
Hmm.
Um, really like my first instinct was actually that she was ISFP. And
Hmm.
she actually, that description fit her well, but she's so okay. It's kind of confusing because in in socionics, ISFP is actually like ISFJ. So like
Yeah.
that would be in the gamma quadrant, and that's what I'm talking about. Like my mom is
Hmm.
definitely ISFJ in socionics or ISFP in Myers-Briggs,
Yeah.
whereas I used to think she was ISFJ in MBTI and ISFP in
Hmm.
socionics, but that's not the case.
Yeah. So I've also dated someone who in MBTI would be an ISFP. And I would say a big difference between her and my mom and my sister is she's more direct and confrontational, whereas my mom and my sister, who are ISFJs, are really do not like conflict and will avoid it like the plague. And they
See,
really
my
want
mom is
people to
not like
be,
that.
yeah. But my mom and my sister are like to the point that they are suffering because they don't want to impose on other people. Um, so I was actually asking my sister, like, what is the difference between us? And she said, um, I like to do things that make people happy in the moment, and you like to do things that make people happy long term, even if like you have to do something right now that makes people upset. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good description. Because in MBTI, I mean, Socionics, those types are lookalikes. So if you like you're to see us, especially like in a holiday atmosphere, we would be very similar. But we're motivated by different things. Like I would be more long term, and my mom and my sister don't think like that. They think about like how do I feel right now.
Yeah. Well,
So
to add to it, my mom, who is again ISFP in MBTI,
mhm.
um, is very she's like indirect but direct, very like commanding, but she'll be like instead of saying do you like can you pick this up, she'll be like, do you want to pick this up, like, but in a way that's like obviously she wants me to pick it up. And
Yeah.
I'm like, Mom, just tell me, pick it up. Don't be like, do you want to do this? I was like, Mom, I don't want to do that, but I'll do it.
Yeah. Um,
She's also very imposing too. But like,
so
I love my mom, but
yeah,
yeah.
all the ISFPs I've known have had really good taste in texture. Like clothing, like upholstery. Like I don't know what it is. Like or even like cooking. I know a couple of friends who are that type, and what I really like about their style of cooking is it's simple, like the ingredients are all very high quality, and you can taste everything, and it's bold, but it all works together. And so I really like that. My mom and my sister, uh, they have a different sort of style where it's almost like to me it seems muddy. But I was talking to my sister about that, and she said, I'm so aware of what's going on all around me. Like I just kind of want things to calm down often. And so for me, like my threshold is much higher than hers, and she's easily overstimulated. And I think that uh, again, maybe a contrast would be they're both very good at introverted sensing. Um, but my mom and my sister, that's sort of like how they live their life. Whereas ISFPs, like your mom, they are very aware of that, but they still like making like an impact with their extroverted sensing.
Yeah.
So that's how I would put that.
Also, I think ISFPs are a little bit spicier and a little bit more on the like if you're thinking of like a woman, you would almost I mean like a female figure, you would think
Mhm.
of like an ISFJ as like almost like this very caring,
Like
like loving, almost
like motherly
nun-like
figure.
figure. Yeah,
Whereas like
motherly.
ISFP is like the mafia.
Yeah, ISFP is kind of like the mafia, but also they're like kind of they have like a seductive quality to them. I think they're very much I think they have a very even though they're not in the alpha quadra, they have like an alpha mentality a lot of
Like a
times.
like a drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and both my mom and my sister are not very driven. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
So
so yeah, what's the next question? If unless you
well,
want unless you want me to talk more about like me growing up, but I think that's a good
I mean, I
snapshot.
think we talked about that. I mean, we can still talk more about it, but I think we did talk a good amount.
Okay.
Uh, David Kiersey. Sorry, I was reading a comment.
Oh,
I have a very,
is
I have
Kiersey
a
watching this?
almost, no.
Hmm.
Someone commented about David Kiersey.
Oh, okay. Probably like his
I,
temperaments.
yeah, I have a hate, kind of love.
Yeah. Tell me
I
more.
have I have a not so much love for David Kiersey
Yeah.
because I like David Kiersey and what he's doing in some ways, but I think he oversimplifies things and I don't like that. But
Yeah.
we'll just leave it at that. Um LOL, what kind of love? The hate love kind. Okay. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. But
So
that's
what's
only
funny,
my what?
you know how people in socionics kind of idealize duality, but I honestly think that like a lot of it starts out as that hate love, but like in a different way. Like when you're like like in the romantic comedies where like two people like start out just like hating the other person and then they're like forced together and then they like in a crisis situation they actually realize that the other person's a great person. So
Yeah.
so like people like to draw like hearts and butterflies around duality, but it's like it's an intense thing.
I love this. Wait. On the chat, Stephanie Douglas said Emily's first number one hit or number one single. Oh, number one single. Hate, love. Yeah, that would be
I'd
it.
listen to that.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I agree with that. So people that don't know about duels, would you like to okay, I guess
Yeah, I
at
can
this
try to
point,
explain
and we're
it.
not going to go too much into it, but would you kind of like to go into how you got into socionics and also kind of what you're talking about as far as duality?
Yeah,
Oh
sure.
my gosh.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I took care of my grandparents for about 4 years until both of them got to a medical state that they needed like professionals, and they both ended up dying. But when I was taking care of them, then I would have about an hour every day where they would take a nap, and I'd have nothing to do. And they were both fall risks. So I had to watch them like a hawk to make sure like a brilliant idea didn't like wake them up and they tried to like stand up too fast and they'd fall over and like break a hip or a knee. But as long as I could like pay attention to them, I had like an hour to do whatever I wanted. And in middle school, actually, I remember taking an MBTI test because one of my teachers was just like raving about it. It's like, this is the best personality test you can take. Like, it's so cool. Like, I learned so much about myself. And I remember taking it and just being like, huh, like, okay, I did the assignment. Like, let's, like, I don't think I even read the description. Um, but since then, I had heard like a couple people talk about the Myers-Briggs. So when I was taking care of my grandparents, I decided I was going to try to learn the Myers-Briggs. And like I wasn't really interested in the test, but I wanted to know like how it worked and if I could like actually apply it like as a person or if it's something that like you really have to just take. And I I looked through a lot of websites. Um, and I each one seemed like it was saying a different thing, and the things that they were saying weren't very definite. And so I was like, I can't decide if someone is one thing or the other because so much of it overlaps. Like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So I had given up actually, but there's like still a part of me that's like, I really want to learn about this. And I stumbled across a Socionics website called Wikisocion. And it surprised me because of how clear and how definite each category and description was. Like I could clearly see like the difference. Um, and so I was really excited that I found that. But along with that, along with the theory of socionics, is a theory not just of personality type, but also relations between different personalities. And so when I was looking into this, I also started reading these intertype relations. And I actually hated them at first. Like I was deeply offended because it seemed like they were deterministic. And I was like, I know from experience that like no matter like you can really put effort into a relationship or you can neglect the person. And it's like your own actions that make it a good or bad relation. But there's also a part of me that's like, if this is real, then I have to like not just ignore it because it's a real thing that would affect me. And so I have to like even if I hate it, I have to acknowledge it. Um, so I spent maybe half a year learning as much as I could about the theory and trying to figure out what my type would be. And again, after like half a year of pretty intense study, then I was able to figure myself out. And it's not something that I was able to do directly. It's like there are all these different aspects, like dimensions to personality I'd never thought of before. And so I couldn't like retroactively think back to my behavior and know if I was one way or the other. So I would keep these in the back of my mind and I'd just do what I'd normally do. And then if something reminded me of like a description I read, then like later that day when I'm at home, I would I would read it and see if I could decide like am I in this category or that category. Um, and I was surprised that I was able to eliminate 15 of the types, and then one of the types remained that I couldn't eliminate, and it seemed like it fit me very well. And so I was like, okay, there's something to this. And then I typed or decided the types of my three family members, my mom, my sister, and my dad, and also some of my close friends. And uh, at the end of that, then I had both like their types and the intertype relation that should theoretically exist between the types, and also like real world examples that I could like look at and that weren't like idealized for like a clinical diagnosis. And it turned out to be very accurate, and I was shocked. But also in the process, I realized that the intertype relations were more like dynamics. Like you can have good and bad chemistry with people. That doesn't mean that that person is a good or bad person, or even that like it's worthwhile to know them or not.
Yeah.
But I can see the appeal of having like good chemistry. So the duality relationship in socionics is the like ideal uh chemi it has the best chemistry for long-term interactions. And it's because everyone has a weakness, but it's if you try to address the weakness right at first, then you often force the person to decide to live life how they normally would, or do it like this other way and like fix their problem. And of course, if they shift their attention over to this, then they're neglecting the thing that they're doing at the beginning. So there's a lot of like critical relationships that point out real flaws that you have, but in a way that like forces you not to be yourself. And duality is special because you're almost so different that you can both be yourself and not get in the other person's way. But in the process, you're so different, you approach life from different, like opposite corners, and it's pretty hard for something to slip in between the cracks between those two people. So that's how I describe duality. Um, so it's like almost the most the strongest relationship with like partners like against like a task or the world, but it's also you're very different from each other. And so that's why I brought up earlier like that like the love story between people who seem to hate each other at first, but then at the end of the movie end up like loving each other. Because I know a lot of people who are like would be my dual type that I did not like when I like first met them. And other people who like I got to know pretty well, but I was never like romantically interested in them. So that's another misnomer that like everyone who is your dual type will be attractive to you. Like there's still a huge diversity of people within that category. So I think everyone should follow like their own natural sense because there's a danger in like having part of the truth and then following that to the T and then messing up like the greater truth that you don't know about. So if you follow your instincts, then I mean, that's how people have always done it. And if you like your emotions are the sum of everything that's happening inside of you, and you can trust that. You can't necessarily trust like one specific psychological theory, like any theory, because there's so much more happening. But I do think it's good to know that this kind of person exists and you can find them. And there's actually quite a lot of people around you right now, maybe, that fit in that category. So it's very interesting to get to know those people to see like how that dynamic actually works with yourself.
Well, the other interesting thing to add about like your dual is you wouldn't, like Andrew was saying, you may not even like your dual at first, and also there's like a sort of suspicious quality with like your dual.
Mhm.
And also you may not hang out in the same places. It's kind of like a
Because
bit
you're
of
so different.
a it's unfortunate because like you are conflictor, which is the opposite of you, like the negative opposite.
Mhm.
Um you may actually admire, and in many ways you both admire each other, but as you get closer you just start to clash, whereas with your dual you may like be apart, but as you get closer you come together more.
Yeah, or at least you can. I
You
think
can.
I read a couple places that necessary for duality to work is sort of like a long-term goal or a reason to stay together. Because if you're just like friends with someone who's your dual, then often you're so different. If there's not anything holding you together, then you'll come together for like a time in your life and then you'll split.
Yeah.
So I in terms of like chemistry, like I don't know if you know much about chemistry, but as a biology major, it's been like drilled into my head. There's like an idea of an activation energy, like wood. Wood has the potential to burn, but you have to add enough heat to the wood to start it burning to start that reaction. So I would say that's kind of how duality works, is you have to reach that like initial activation, but another reason why it's so good is you'll never get to the end of it. Um, like we're the same type. So do
Yeah.
you mind if I talk about identity?
Yeah.
So what's so cool about identity is because socionics is a theory of information metabolism, people who are the same type fundamentally see the world in the same way. And so we all see the same world, but for someone who sees it from a different perspective, anything that you try to teach them or communicate, they have to take from your perspective and put it into their perspective. Whereas like identity, you don't need to do that. And so when you meet someone who is your identity, it's really easy to quickly like exchange a lot of information. And it's almost like if you had lived a different life, like just like where you're born, like you could have been born many different places, like around the world. And someone who's your identity can kind of give you into a window of like what you would have learned in that situation. Um, but the negative part of identity is if once that exchange has finished, then it can become monotonous because you're both good at the same things and you're both bad at the same things. And it's hard. It's not really complementary. And once like that initial like rush of like exchanging information has ended, then this other person can't live your life any better than you are already living it. And like, of course, we all like to be in control. So why let someone who just won't do it any better, but differently, like tell you what to do? Like you want to do it yourself. Whereas like duality, you're so different, you can't become like your dual. And that's why it's such a good partnership. You'll never like exhaust their use. And I've heard that like identity can work really well when there's a constant flow of new information. So if like people like for friends, like as you go through life, you're always like learning and experiencing new things. And so like someone who is your friend, who's your identity, you can constantly be coming back together and sharing like what's happening. But in a marriage, it's like, would you want to marry someone just like yourself? Like maybe, but I think a lot of people are interested, like attracted naturally to people who are different. So that's the, and I really want to emphasize that duality and identity and all the intertype relations, they they have a dynamic, but they don't determine if the relationship is going to be good or bad. I mean,
Exactly.
like imagine like someone who like really cares about you and like puts your needs first versus someone who like doesn't value you and is lying to you. Like the first one is obviously going to be better than the second one. Um, but what's interesting about socionics is it talks about a dynamic of interaction that most people aren't aware of. So I for me personally, like I've gotten a lot out of putting together like what you would naturally see in people together with this sort of like higher level thing that's happening. And it's very interesting.
So I've seen a bit of confusion in the comments, which makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So for those of you that maybe this is kind of going over your head a little bit, and I'm sorry, we're definitely going to do a lot more videos about this, but I actually have a very, very, very basic video on my channel about socionics. Like I have it on there and I tried to make it as bare bones as possible for people
Mhm.
to be able to kind of pick up on like the really basic terms and stuff. You also get to know the different elements and um, like on the basic level, and you'll get to know what like IEI is, like the little 3-letter indicator that Socionics has and stuff.
Mhm.
But to kind of go over this a little bit, so IEI or INFp in Socionics or INFJ in Myers-Briggs, and again, it doesn't necessarily transfer over. I like to think it does, but this is me coming from Socionics as a baseline and then going into MBTI. I don't think it always can work where someone starts off in MBTI and then goes into Socionics. Like I think that actually can be harmful for a lot of people.
And
Oh,
to 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 clarify, the reason why they can be comparable maybe is they're both based on Carl Jung's work on psychological types. So because they're both extensions of the same thing and they basically came up with the same answer, then it's very easy to put them together. We're just trying to be careful because like if you took an MBTI test, we're not sure if that's accurate to transfer over to socionics, and we don't want to confuse anyone. So even if there's like more correlation than we're like giving it credit, we just don't want to confuse anyone.
yeah, exactly. And also just remember, if anything, so let's say you were typed correctly in MBTI. Um, if you're an extrovert, it's going to be the same. At least the J and the P is going to be this, like you're going to be the same. So if you're an ENFJ and Myers-Briggs, this is if you were typed correctly.
Mhm.
You're going to be an ENFJ in Socionics. But I've said this so many times, but it's something that just needs to be drilled as much as possible because, some people are watching this for the first time. The P and the J in Myers-Briggs is a bit different than in Socionics. Like, there's more to it than this, but in Myers-Briggs, they go by the first extroverted function. So in Myers-Briggs, with the stacking, the first extroverted function for like an introvert is going to be the opposite. So it's going to be the opposite, either P or J, than what their primary function is.
It's going to be sort of how they interact with the world, which
Yes.
kind of makes sense in a business environment because like
Yes.
your boss doesn't really care about your soul, they just care about like your work. Whereas socionics would define it based on the most dominant aspect of your personality, even if it's hidden from other people. So that's why there's confusion. And we're sorry, we know this is difficult and it confuses a lot of people, but you did a good job explaining it.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And I think we're like Andrew and I are basically on the same page with all of this, which is awesome. But yeah, like an MBTI, you have to remember that MBTI is okay. I know there's a lot of people that love MBTI, and to some degree, I like MBTI or love MBTI too. But it's a very rudimentary version of personality theory compared to Socionics. And that's just like, that's not me like, just favoring Socionics. It's just the truth. Like if you look into Socionics, it's just like not comparable. MBTI was created as, like Andrew said, for a business like environment. Is created for business. It was created for a student environment. So like teaching.
It's also right now it's a corporation. So
exactly.
I don't like corporations.
Well, people use it to it's a very simple test and they use it in jobs. And the reason why they use the secondary, not the secondary function, it is a secondary function for introverts, but why they use the first extroverted function, and I've said this before to people, is like an INFJ in Myers-Briggs, even though they're actually INFPs because their primary function is perceiving, and vice versa, like an INFp in Myers-Briggs is actually an INFJ in Socionics because their primary function is judging. Introverted feeling is a judging function. Introverted intuition is a perceiving function. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, and beneath the jargon, even though that there's like different ways of saying the same type, if you go by the function stack, like the 4 function, or maybe even like the Beeves like 8 functions with like the shadow functions, the main 2 are the same. And so if you're ever confused, then compare like what is this Socionics type's ego block, which is the first and second function, with like what are the first and second functions of MBTI. So like forget about the letters, you just make those match, and then that's what's important. And just know that there's like a rationality behind why they're different and it's confusing. And again, we're sorry we didn't make it, and you just have to do it.
But it kind of makes sense because like INFJs if you see them in a work environment because of extroverted feeling, they're going to seem neat and tidy and organized and maybe even timely. But in all reality, that isn't necessarily how they are, like at their, when they're by themselves. Or actually, I would say INFJs are notorious for this, and INTJs in Myers-Briggs, is we're very much like kind of showing off to people in a different way. Like INTJs do it in a different way than INFJs do. But INFJs in Myers-Briggs will present themselves to the public a lot different than how they are at their house. So they won't let everybody into their house if they think their house is messy. They want to, they won't let people, for example, my room isn't super messy, so I'll show it. But like I've been cleaning my room for a while, but but I wouldn't go ahead and like do this even a few days ago because I had laundry on the floor and it was messy. But
yeah, I like having people over because it motivates me to clean my house. And if people didn't come over, I wouldn't clean. But like I want people to be comfortable and like happy. So I'll do it.
Whereas like an INFP, and this is stereotyping, INFP or INTP in Myers-Briggs, which again, they're actually INFJ and INTJ in Socionics. In Myers-Briggs, the reason why I believe they have the perceiving function, especially like in the work environment, school, stuff like that, they can come across way more unorganized, and even to the extent that if an INFP or an INTP invited them into their home, again, not saying everybody's like this, but generally they're not going to be as concerned with the mess that's around. Like they're not going to really care as much, where the INTJ and the INFJ and MBTI would be a lot more concerned about that, whether or not they're messy or not. Like I know a lot of INTJ, well, a good amount, and I know a lot of INFJs, and we are not like these cleanly people all the time. So
Yeah, I actually have an example. So I work as a math tutor, because before I was biology, I thought I wanted to be an engineer, which was stupid. But anyway, I took like all the math I needed that I could at a community college before I transferred to my university. When I realized, when I actually took like engineering classes, that I hated it. So I had like taken 3 semesters of calculus, differential equations, linear algebra. And I was like, God damn, like, what do I do with this? And I was like, well, maybe I can like be a teacher, kind of like a teacher, because you're not supposed to teach people as a tutor. But I asked like my coworkers like a year ago, like, do you guys think I'm an introvert or an extrovert? And everyone like hands down is like, Andrew, you're such an extrovert. Like you're the most extroverted person like we know. And I was like, oh damn, like I'm doing a good job. But like to contrast that, right now, a friend of a friend is staying here with me at my this house. And yesterday she asked me like, did I offend you? And I was like, no, like why do you think you offended me? And she said, oh, like we were talking the other day, but I don't like really see you that much, and like you know, like you really keep to yourself. And I told her like the paradox is, if you got to know me like as a friend, like I would spend a lot of time with you, but if I like moved in with you as a roommate, then you would like rarely see me. And it's because when I'm in public, I want to be very social, but I have a limited amount of energy to do that. And then when that's used up, I want to be alone. And so like if you live with me, like I think like in a bad way, I can kind of be like that ghost roommate that like you wake up in the morning, things have moved around, but like you never see them. I'm not quite that bad, but
oh,
uh,
I have a story after this.
yeah, but like when I want to be around people, I really give people my energy and my attention. So there's definitely like two sides to me. And I've also heard that INFJ and ISFJ in MBTI are some of like the more social introverts. So like we're definitely introverts, but we're good with people and we like to be around people. It's just like we also like to be by ourselves.
Yeah. No, I agree. I can agree with that. Like, I mean, just to kind of, again, to go off of what Andrew just said about the roommate thing, anybody that's been roommates with me over the last few years, I guess this is a bit different. Like, this is the most intrusive roommate that I've had in a long time, and that's my mom.
I
But
thought you were gonna say Henry.
no, Henry also is, but my mom's probably the most intrusive roommate I've had in the last 6 or 7 years. But you
Mhm.
know, before my mom, um, even with my sister, I definitely was like I was very much keep to myself. But I would also have parties, but even at the parties, I would go to my room and do
Yeah,
that when I needed to.
yeah.
But but kind of to go off of like the hermit, I mean, the aloof roommate kind of thing. When
The
I
ghost.
was, this was, well, okay, this was also a very low point in my life. Um, I don't know if, you know, probably not all of you have seen the depression video that I made, but this was
Mhm.
actually during that time. But I think as INFJs, again, in MBTI terms, we can have a tendency to be like this. But when I was living on campus, and I had 3 other roommates. I said maybe a few, like I had a conversation with one of my roommates when I first moved in, because we like went to this event. But other than that, I said a few words or sentences the entire semester, and I would just go in and out of my room, and I would just not talk to them, and I would never go in the kitchen or the living room. I would just, whenever I was home, I would be locked in my room, and I wouldn't talk to anybody. Again, I was also in a very low part, very, very depressed. But yeah, people, they didn't even know what I sounded like until the next semester when I got better, but also I had pumpkin on campus illegally in my dorm.
It's worth it, man.
So, but yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I almost feel like when I'm social, I make a conscious effort, and that's how I would differentiate myself with my EIE friend, so an MBTI ENFJ, because he doesn't have such a burst as I do, but it's steady, and he can keep up with so many more people than I can. Like he can have like 30
Yes.
friends at the same time, and like once I get above like six, then like I can't give everyone enough attention, and I'll exhaust myself. Also, like I go through cycles and I really need to like explore negative emotions to figure out like who I am and like what I want to do. And when I'm going through those phases, I wouldn't necessarily call that depression, but it's definitely introspection. I like to be by myself. And I'll get to a point that like I know what I need to do, and then I will have the energy to do something because like I have a goal. And this cycle for me can go for years. So I can like be like very like keeping to myself for years and then decide that I need to become active and do something. And I can do that for a couple of years and then it goes back. But it has to be a cycle for me. I can't maintain, like being very social all the time.
I agree. That's partly why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Because well, okay. Okay, this sounds bad, but I wouldn't say I love everybody, because I don't know everybody that's watching. But the people that I do know, and these are people that I've actually interacted with, like Andrew, like Michelle, like Stephanie, like Faye, like Shaham, I do genuinely love you guys. But at the same time, I also
Like you
there's
just
a little
can't do
too
it.
much love there. There's a little too much love, and it's
Yeah.
becoming a bit intense. And I'm not saying the people that I just said out loud are, the reason, but there's way more, there's way more people out there, John, Melanie, Mark, even though Mark's not on YouTube right now. It sounded like John, Mark. It sounded like I was like Luke, like talking about the Bible. No. No, but I really just need to step away from all the social interaction because it's been a little intense because I love interacting with people. I love responding to people and I want to keep it up. But I also want to in the future. So like when I come back from March, I'm going to come up with a way better solution of like still replying to all the comments, still interacting, but not doing it as I think what I'm doing too much is like even though I love reacting, I'm also being very reactive all the time. Like I'm always on reactive mode, and not in a negative way. It's almost always positive, and I never try to say like negative things. Like even if someone's mean, I've gotten to the point where I just delete those comments because I don't even need to interact with that. But I just need to set aside time for that because it's been a little intense for me and I need to go into this reclusive state that I've never done in the last few years, like where I don't
like honestly, like I'm impressed you lasted so long, and that's why I made that effort to make that 30-hour phone call because I thought this was going to happen earlier. So like good on you for having more energy than I have.
Well, I've also wanted to do this for a long time, so that's probably it. And also in a weird way, and I don't, again, I hate, like, I mean, I'm bringing it up. Obviously, I don't need to make excuses about it. I'm bringing it up. But like my breakup had this weird effect on me where I was very upset about, what happened, obviously. And now it's hitting me more. And it's not that I never want to be with him again. And that's not like in a mean way. It's just like, I just know that that's not going to work out. It's not in like, he's a great guy, all of those things, but it's just never going to work out in the future. Maybe it would, but I really don't think so. And so I kind of came to that resolution, but also like in the moment when it first happened for a good amount of time, I went on a crazy streak. We all know the crazy like interview everybody. Like
Yeah.
like the majority of my interviews were during that time, and I just like was like distraction, and
Yeah.
it wasn't the best.
When I break up with people, I have to like grieve for at least a year before I like am ready to date anyone else. And so if you've been like keeping yourself busy, you've never had time to go through that process. So
Yeah. Well,
so I totally support it, and you're doing it better than how I do it because like I'm always like, well, maybe like I'll like find the energy like tomorrow. Like I don't want to like let people down. And then like I'll just like fall off the face of the earth for like a month. And I won't tell anyone because I'm still like hoping that like maybe like tomorrow like I can go back to that state. So like by being very upfront with people, like that's how I should do it and I don't do it. So good job. You're an inspiration.
okay, but I haven't always been this way. I used to be like that as well. It's been a journey for me, and I just realized like, over time and actually over like some of the depression things, actually like even though this was depression, it wasn't just a low moment like you were saying, like the highs and lows. I totally agree with that. Like you have to go through the highs and lows.
And you have
But
to go through suffering to like burn away the things that don't matter to really, and that's what gives you clarity.
yes. And yeah, with the depression thing, like especially during that time when I was very, very reclusive. So that like the fall of 2015, really like fall.
Yeah.
um, I the thing I did learn about that is how much people did care about me, like during that time. I mean, I really, like, obviously wasn't active on YouTube and stuff, so I didn't have, like, this community. But the people in my, like, everyday life, like my professors, my friends, like my parents, even though my parents didn't think I was depressed,
Mhm.
but like even my stepmom, like the people that were closest in my life, it was very eye-opening, especially my professors. That was how they reacted to my depression, and like the fact that I wasn't coming to class. It just like it was just so sweet. I can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
But it also made me realize now how much, you don't realize how much you can impact people. And I just try not to now. I try to be more conscientious of the fact that even though I don't think I'm like the shit or anything, and I'm not, I'm not the shit.
Yeah.
I have like three pimples on my chin right now. I'm wearing my mom's like old sweater thing. I'm on my
Yeah.
period.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Guys, but
That's a sacrifice.
but yeah, it's like I do realize that even if it's just one person, I know that like there's someone that is affected by me in some way, and I don't want to like keep people high and dry. And I'm
Mhm.
not always perfect about it. I don't always respond to emails right away, um, and comments, but I do want people to know, how much they mean to me.
Mhm.
So that's part of it.
Yeah, so I know that like we're gonna do content together in the future, but I also like I enjoy your show. So like I really appreciate the effort you put into it. And I don't know if you've like gotten ads yet, but even if you have, you're probably getting like $5 a month. So you put a whole lot of work into this, and like I appreciate it, and I totally understand, and I hope everyone understands too, because you really made it a good effort, and
Well,
we'll look
thank you.
forward when you come back.
Yeah.
Maybe this is actually like a good strategy, like in motivational speaking, like you keep the crowd waiting, and you have like other like unimportant speakers come out first, so it's more of a spectacle. So maybe in a way, this
I
is good.
mean, I am a pretty strategic person, but I mean, I am going to make a video in the future, which it also has to do with like this, but I am going to make a video about what it was like because I think a lot of us, especially the aspect of like you not even getting physically on YouTube, there's going
Mhm.
to be, I don't think there's going to be more than one video, unfortunately, but there's probably going to
Mhm.
be at least one video. And I shouldn't say probably, I should make it a thing. And it's going to happen that I'm going to schedule sometime in the middle of the month. It's going to be a weird video. I've talked about this, like potentially making this video. It's going to be strange. So I apologize if it's weird.
Wait, what's the video?
I'm
Unless
not,
it's a
I
secret.
can tell you after. I'll tell
Okay,
you.
yeah,
But
cool.
yeah, it's going to be an interesting video. So that's going to come up. But yeah, I am going to do a video in the future about my experience because I think it would be interesting for people to hear about it.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so I know you want to keep these like a manageable length. I think we've been going an hour and a half. Or that's
Oh,
what it. So I just
really?
want to know, do you want to, is that right?
Yeah,
This has
we've
been,
been going 80 minutes.
yeah. So do you want to call it a night? Because we could talk the rest of the night, and I want to
That's
respect your time.
true. Well, we totally do that anyways. Yeah, I know, but I love talking with you, Andrew.
Yeah,
But
I like talking with
also,
you too.
I'm introducing what we're calling the greatest hits, where we bring on people. Well, first of all, I don't even know why I'm saying this to you because you're gonna be fucking on the channel. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that sounded actually like
So
that
even
word choice
even
was
if people hate me, like too bad.
yeah,
Uh,
you're gonna be sick of us. Andrew's
Yeah.
gonna be on this channel a lot. But yeah, so greatest hits, we might as well stop while we're ahead, I guess. Even though
Yeah.
I don't know if we're ahead right now. But
Yeah. Do you want to have me answer any questions if anyone asks?
yes, okay, yeah. Answer some questions and then we'll get off.
Okay.
Okay. Wait, can you see them?
No, I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay.
So
Actually, they're really oh, whoa, I'm starting to lose my voice. There's
after
not
that
too
socionic stuff where people like, whoa, and didn't have much to say.
oh my gosh. People are just talking about our little speeches that we've been making about.
Oh.
No, I think people were just watching. Um, well, there was the one thing which it was cleared up by Brenna,
Hmm.
where Faye was well, actually, who originally asked? Someone asked what an INTJ's dual would be in Socionics, which
ESFP.
yeah, so yeah, you have to think about this would be
Like
kind of
the stack. It's like if you flip it upside down. That's
yeah,
your
kind
dual.
of go over what the quadras are in in Myers-Briggs terms, like what the
Oh,
cognitive functions would be and what the quadras would be.
can I actually get that thing as a visual aid?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the microphone down. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hello. Oh, hey, Eric from Talking with Famous People.
Okay, can you? Okay, I'm gonna have to move this back one sec. It's bigger than it looks.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see me, but I'll just point. Um, you know how the Myers-Briggs has 8 cognitive functions, and that's something that they got from Carl Jung.
Yeah.
So each of these shapes represents one of those cognitive functions. So this is introverted sensing, this is extroverted intuition. And they make a value pair because even though that in a way they're opposites, they don't get in the way with each other. And so you can have people who one is dominant in introverted sensing and one is dominant in extroverted intuition. And that's sort of like there's a complementary chemistry because you're different, but you can work together. And just like in the Myers-Briggs, how there are judging and perceiving functions, these are organized. These two are perceiving, and then these two are judging. And the intersection of a perceiving value and a judging value is a quadra. That's how I would describe it. So these, what each of these represents a type. So there's 4 types that are a combination of this value with that value. Um, the hard thing about talking about quadra is, in a way, this is like socionics enlightenment. Like it makes sense, but it's really hard to encapsulate 2 opposite things in the same word. So I personally like the Reinen dichotomies, but with anything that you're describing these values, they'll tend to like skew toward one or the other because they're just so different. So these would be judicious elements, and then these would be decisive elements. The difference being the judicious elements, people who have that as their cognition, uh, like to be in a state of rest, whereas the decisive types want to be in a state of readiness. That makes sense. So that's a difference. And then these over here, this is introverted thinking and extroverted feeling, and that's the opposite of extroverted thinking and introverted feeling. So again, both types of cognition, but you see like this thinking is extroverted, this thinking is introverted. So is that good? Oh, let me say these types would be merry, and then these types would be serious. But don't just go on the word, like look up the actual definitions because it's a very technical thing. So that's how I would describe quadra. Was that what you're hoping for?
I think that was a bit of a. I mean, I was able to follow, and maybe people are
Yeah.
able to follow, but I think it was a little. I might have been a little over their heads.
So
Because,
here's
I
maybe
mean,
a
I look
bet.
at it and I see the quadras. Like I know which quadras you're talking about, but I also think that. I mean, I can try to explain it if you want.
Oh, let me try one more time.
Okay.
So if people are familiar with the Myers-Briggs 4 function stack, like for INFJ, let me move this forward. For INFJ, it would be introverted intuition as the base function, extroverted feeling as the auxiliary function, introverted thinking as the tertiary function, and extroverted sensation for the inferior function. So there are 4 combinations that you can put those elements as the first and have all of them in the stack. So those 4 types are in the same quadra.
Yeah.
So so any type that has all 4 introverted intuition, extroverted feeling, introvert thinking, extrovert sensation would be in the beta quadra. And so that would include types like ESTP, ISTP, ENFJ, and INFJ. And
And
it's
this is
because,
in MBTI terms.
yes, and it's because they have all 4 functions in their stack. So you can classify 4 major groups this way, and it's because there's those cognitions somehow define the values of that type. So was that better?
Yeah.
Are people saying that like that made sense, or are people still confused?
It's a little lagged, so I don't know if people have collected their thoughts yet. Eric from Talking with Famous People said, "Okay, I is C I see, I guess. I like how Socionics uses shapes, but I cannot remember which is which. That's actually an interesting one to go over the elements.
Yeah.
Um, also,
Do you want to
Eric,
do
I
it
don't know
this
if you
video?
watched. What was that?
Do you want to do it this video, or do we want to end and wait? that can be one of our things that
That's
we
true.
give the
Yeah.
world after your
Okay.
hiatus.
Well, just check out, and I can link it in the description, but check out my very, 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 very basic socionics video. And that goes over the elements and what they
My
mean.
my YouTube channel is called Squareheart because the element that looks like a corner, if you turn it over, it kind of looks like a heart. So that's why I
Yeah.
called it that. So the one that looks like a corner, just remember that's a heart, and that's the feeling or
Yeah.
ethics.
Yeah. So like for an IEI, like it means intuitive, ethical, introvert.
Yeah, so the ethical part means that one of the first two functions in the MBTI stack will be feeling, if we're putting in those terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like I keep on saying this, but like the jargon is really bad and I'm really sorry about it. There's nothing I can do. So
Well,
we'll
we are
we'll try to
going to.
make it really clear and really easy, but it's also something that you're just gonna have to get to used to. And like my sincerest apologies, because like I hate jargon. When people like try to like come up with new jargon, I'm always like, no, like because you have to learn it. So we're
Yeah.
sorry. We'll try to make it as easy as possible.
Well, we're going to. We have to have faith in one another. We're
Yeah.
gonna, we're gonna go through a typology journey, guys, in the future. It's gonna be cool. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, combined IQ of 220 will probably make it happen, right?
um.
Yeah.
No.
So do you want to leave it there?
Andrew, okay, wait a second. I have to say this. Andrew always likes to talk about how he has a really low IQ or like very low average
I
IQ.
know, I'm just afraid. Like I've never taken an IQ test. Like what if I take it? I'm
Andrew,
90.
you are fucking a genius, and okay, you're fucking a genius.
Well,
Why do I get like that?
at least
Okay,
my persona
I
game is working pretty well.
I believe that you are a genius,
Oh,
or at least
at least
on the
above average.
you're at least above. You would at least be in the intelligent range, at least. I don't
Yeah,
know what the cutoff is.
I'll agree with
Um,
that. No, I'm just joking. I
yeah.
just because like I don't know if you put that in your videos, but you talked about your IQ and you also put like your type and your like height and weight on all of your videos. And
I
so I
did
just thought
not
that
put
was
my
funny.
IQ in every single video.
No, no,
No,
I just like it's a
Andrew,
funny
you
thing to
know my
bring up.
IQ, but I don't think other people do. I've never said what my IQ is on this channel.
Oh.
I've talked about it with you, but I don't think other people.
Oh. Okay, yeah. So maybe I'm just thinking about like the height and weight. But anyway,
I
it's
didn't put
funny.
my weight
But when I was
either.
oh okay, well maybe I'm just not remembering like what I saw. But
No, I just put
when
my
I was
age,
talking with Brittany,
my age and my height. If I
yeah.
was 25 pounds, I would be like a little. That would be my
Oh,
head.
okay, yeah, that was it. Anyway, like, but it totally makes sense because you don't have any scale. Like, I've talked to some people, and they think that I'm really short, but I'm actually 6'3". I'm just in a gigantic chair, so
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
Well, people also think I'm short too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So, like, I understand the utility.
Well, I'm actually gonna take. I'm starting. I don't. I probably didn't do it on this. I really need to just. It's automatic, so I need to just like cut it off again because I think people get the memo, and if they want to look back on old videos and see how tall is Emily, they can do it. But
Yeah,
I think people know by now. They're
like
probably
maybe
they're probably like, why does this scale have her height and her? No, I know people do. I think it's kind of funny, but it's also
it,
really stupid.
it can be like in a couple of years, like a way for people to know if like someone is like actually like legit. Like you can just casually in conversations, like, oh yeah, like how tall is Emily? And if they say like I don't know, it's like you're a new person.
Yeah, have this like obscure trivia.
Yeah, it's like one of those like handshakes where like you wink at somebody a certain way and like they know you're one of the ones.
Yeah. Well, I feel like for both of us, I obviously have horrible posture right now. I'm like really I'm like
Yeah,
laying on
me
my
too.
back. But like
That's
I have
actually
oh go ahead.
that's why I like New York City because I'm very tall and I feel like I'm towering over a lot of people. And recently I've decided it's a good thing because um like it's nice that like people might give me just some basic respect because I'm so tall, but I also kind of feel bad. So like my whole life I've tried to like get down to other people's level. But in New York City, all the skyscrapers are so tall, I feel like it's natural to have good posture. So I
Yeah.
love going to New York City and just like walking around because like if I can remember how this feels, then I can do this all the time. But it's a constant struggle for me having good posture.
Well, I get that. I mean, my dad is 6'5", so he has you beat, Eric. My dad has you beat because Eric's from talking with famous people just said that he's 6'4". Yeah, no,
Oh,
Stephanie, you're not
damn.
average. 5'7" is above average. 5'4" is average in the U.S. for
Wow.
women, and 5'9" is average for men. So I'm
Mhm.
just above average height for men, but that's okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up with a really tall dad, so I kind of have a skewed height perception. Like basically, I mean, I've either dated guys about the same height as me, like the person that I dated in my past relationship is only slightly taller than me, like an
Mhm.
inch. But I've also dated guys that are 6'5". Like I've either dated guys that are like almost the same height as me or like really tall.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I think everyone I've dated has been on the shorter side. But after you talked about it, I was like, maybe I should marry someone who's really tall, and then all of our babies can be like really tall. Like that would be cool.
Well,
But
that's what my mom was thinking. My mom's 5'4.5", and she said, I want to have tall children. So she married my dad, who's like over a foot taller than her.
wow,
So,
so like 6'5"?
yeah, he's 6'5".
Damn,
So
that's impressive. Do you
yeah.
think, okay, so when I was thinking about that, I feel like being tall is a good thing to have in the business world because again, people implicitly give you some respect because you seem more intimidating just instinctually. But I also heard that like a lot of girls who are like extra tall, they don't like it growing up. So like if you had like the choice to like be really tall or be a little bit shorter, what would you like? Because if I marry someone who's like also super tall, I expect all of our children would be pretty tall. But if I marry
I
someone who's
mean,
like who balances me out more, then we're more normal. Uh, so we can't be exceptional, but maybe it would be better for girls.
well, for me, I guess the thing is for me, like, I mean, I try not to be too picky about this, but prefer taller guys, and for me, taller guys is like, again, I have such a skewed perception of height. 6'5" doesn't seem that tall to me, which is also
Hmm.
really weird because that's tall. That's really tall. So I don't really
Hmm.
see 6'5" as that tall, but I also know that it's really tall.
Hmm.
It just seems normal to me. Like it just
So,
seems normal. And like when guys are like, like I said, my past relationship and like a good amount of other guys, like basically 50-50, they've either been like 6'3" and above, or they've been like 5'10", 5'11".
mhm.
Um, I do prefer the taller, just for
Yeah.
me, but that's just for me. So,
Um, so you didn't really feel like any sort of stigma growing up as like a taller girl.
well, so I've always been like on the taller end, but I also was
Mhm.
like, I mean, you can relate to this because you were also the same way as like really skinny too.
Yeah.
I'm just now like, I mean, people still say this, like, I've seen it in my videos where people are like, you look like you've lost weight and stuff. It's like, no,
I just grew
I've
taller.
always, this is me actually, like, on the bigger side of life. I mean, that sounds
Yeah.
really, not like in a weird, like, in a, like, whatever way, but like, I've always been, like, smaller. I'm just like, that's how I am. I have a small frame, and that's also why people think I'm short.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because on video you might seem like petite, but like in real life you're like, oh, like you're not 5 foot.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I
And
always
like
was
not
kind of
not
curious.
not not like this matters because I doubt I would. someone's height would factor into like if I wanted to like date and marry them like at all. Like that's like such so low on the list. But I was just curious because like I do like the idea of like having like a whole family of super tall people. But then I thought like, well, if I did that intentionally, then like would I be harming like the emotional well-being of my any daughters I have like in any small way? But it sounds like it was like a something noticeable, but like it didn't really matter.
I mean, no, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I'm
Hmm.
glad, I mean, personally, I'm glad that I'm not like 6 foot.
Hmm.
But also I think it can be good too, because like one of my biggest like my one of my biggest inspirations is actually like Carly Kloss, who I
Hmm.
believe is an ENFJ. But
Hmm.
that's beside the point. She's 6'2", I want to say. And that to me is like a little too tall for me. But at the same time, I think it's cool. I would rather, I mean, I mean, I think it would be cool to have really tall kids, honestly, but
Yeah. I
um,
think it'd be cool to have like some like unique feature about all of your family that like someone can see and identify and it's like, oh, you must be like these must be your parents. Like I think that would be cool.
yeah.
And I also know that there's probably a lot of petite business women out there that feel like their height is limiting their success. And have you noticed that a lot of celebrities are really tall? Like you don't notice, but like Cohen is like 6'5" or something. Ridiculous.
It
Like the
really
only
depends.
celebrities
I would say a lot of actors are actually short.
Mhm. Like the only like really short actor I know of is Kevin Hart.
No, I would say, I mean, not short, but I would say average. A lot of actors are kind of average, like even like the guys.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, there's certain people in Hollywood that are really tall. Like, I mean, for example, Taylor Swift is like 5'11", I want to say.
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like being tall. Like if I had to do it over, I'd be just like how I am. So I the cosmic dice did me good. I got lucky.
Well, who knows what's gonna happen in the future?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll marry someone that's short. I don't know.
Yeah, I went to a wedding and it was a really tall lady marrying a really short guy. And in this ceremony, then he brought over like two phone books when they kissed and like put them like really loudly on the ground and stood on top of it. And it was really funny. So like I've been to weddings I don't remember, but I remember that one because it was funny. So
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, that kind of stuff doesn't matter. Um,
yeah,
Again, I would prefer someone taller than me. Um, but it's not.
I
I
know
mean, I
it's
also understand that I'm tall as a female, so.
yeah. And it, like for me personally, it's just like so low on the priorities. It's almost like doesn't matter. I
Well,
was just thinking about it because you
also
two were talking
most
about it.
most women are shorter than you,
Yeah. Hmm.
so.
Great. Well, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, we really went off deep in
Yeah.
there. Okay, let's see. I don't know if there's any really questions. Oh, yeah. People were saying that I looked like I was 4 feet, or like I looked very petite. I mean, I just have smaller, like I said, smaller features. So, like, I mean, my measurements are just smaller. Like,
Hmm.
so that's part of it. Also, I have a big head, and you guys can't really tell as
Oh, I
much.
can tell because I've when I was growing up, I wanted to be shorter because like I feel like I have a small head, and I felt like if I was shorter, then I would like it would be my head would be shorter in this direction and it'd be cuter. But like because you're the same size as me, that's something I instantly notice is like, oh wow, like you've got a white head. Like I'm jealous.
I
Like
feel
I
like
wish
you
I
don't have a small head either.
Yeah, I know. It's just like one of those like personal insecurities. Like people are like, I don't like how the back of my head is flat. And everyone's like, we never noticed that and we still can't see it, even though you pointed it out. But like for me, like the last person I dated, she was African and had a very big head. And one day she's like, Andrew, you have a small head. And I was like, I know. But you know Christopher Langan? That's the guy with like the highest recorded IQ. He's
Oh
always
yeah.
talking about like how he's got a big head, and I was like, yeah, yeah. And then I saw a picture next to like with him next to a normal person, and his head is like twice the size of the other dude's head, and this other guy's like pretty buff, and I was like, wow, like he does have a big head.
That's
But
really
yeah, he's also really tall, so like as a package, it's very well proportioned.
well, my mom used to call me bobblehead. And like I said, like I'm trying, well, I'm not trying to lose weight because I definitely don't need to lose weight. I'm
Hmm.
trying to get in better shape. I just want to be toned. But like I have a very like I can get pretty tiny. Um I'm trying to avoid that. But
Hmm.
like especially when I was younger and like, this wasn't because I've never had an eating disorder. I've never, any of those things, but always been smaller and for the longest time and even now, like if I can't really wear tight fitted clothing because I just look very tiny.
Hmm.
Um it makes me look like, I mean, I'm a bobblehead, and that's what my mom used to call me all the time is like bobblehead.
Yeah, see, I made a conscious decision to wear a sweater so that I wouldn't seem so skinny. So I'm the same way. Yeah, and like I eat basically whatever I want, but my whole life I've been aware of like not to overeat. And since I was 10, I made the decision that like whenever I had the choice, if I could like take an elevator or stairs, I would run up the stairs. And I try not to do that in certain situations because I feel like now that I'm an adult, it's kind of weird if like a guy's just like running upstairs. But I definitely take the stairs, and I feel like hopefully like that will keep me like a decent weight when I get older and my metabolism goes down. But I might have the opposite problem and like never be able to bulk up because I don't have enough body fat.
I mean, it's possible. Like, I mean, another example, which this is another thing, and we really should get off soon. But like, we'll even see this with the descriptions of the types in socionics. Like, it actually goes into stuff like that, like physicality and like even
Mhm.
um, what they're like, kind of a trend with people's physique, which
Yeah,
is
definitely a
interesting.
trend. Because I've noticed that like with your INFJ interviews, because a lot of the people who watch your channel and then want to be interviewed are INFJ.
Yeah.
A lot of people tend to be on the skinnier side, but there's definitely people who are not. So it's not
Yes.
deterministic, but it is interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely not, but there's certain, and I'm not even saying just like weight wise, but there's certain trends of even like, even how, their physique is. For example, a good example actually would be Modern Health Monk, who I just interviewed a few people ago. He's an INFJ. He's not really in this community. He has his own like successful businesses and like he's actually like super cool, and I'm really surprised that he even like agreed to do the interview because he even like we like talk on Instagram every once in a while, and he's like really nice too. Because he has like over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. But anyways, that's
Mhm.
beside the point. He for the longest time was like so skinny. He's I want to say 6'1", 6'1" or 6'2",
Mhm.
and he used to be like 100. I want to say 120 or 30 pounds, and that was just his normal.
Wow. Yeah.
And he bulked up. He like made it his mission to go to the gym and like basically work out religiously
Mhm.
um for years, and he finally got to the point where he started gaining muscle mass. But it was like a long time. It wasn't like something that happened overnight because he's just like naturally skinny. So now he's like at
Mhm.
180 or something, and he's trying to get like he's either 170 something or 180 something, and he wants to get bigger. But yeah, it's definitely possible, but it's harder for certain people.
Yeah, can I tell you a story before we
Yes.
end? Um, so people who know only the MBTI won't know this, but there are additional dichotomies in socionics that you can divide the groups and define them. And a lot of them seem to be pretty good, but there's always a debate on like if they're very accurate. And one of these is a trait called farsightedness, which is a tendency to make general decisions that work over the long term rather than make a specific, and it doesn't have to be a decision, but instead of like the specific case that applies right now. And I would definitely say I'm a farsighted type, and
Me
that's what
too.
I theoretically would be. But so would our dual, which in MBTI is ESTP, and they're not known for like the most like farsighted frame of mind. It's more like active, like here now. And so I asked my SLE friend, like if she thinks that she's farsighted, and she said, "Oh, definitely." And I was like, "Well, in what way?" And she's like, I work out and I keep myself healthy so that I can be like pretty forever. And because I'm starting now, I'm going to last a long time. And at first I was like, huh, that's like a kind of a silly thing. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized like that's genius. And like I've known some ESTP women and also men who are like 50 or 60, but they still have the body of like a younger person. And I was like, wow, like that's actually like really profound. And so uh I've been like trying to work out and like moisturize my face so I can stay young the longest possible. Um so it's funny how like it's in such a different way than how I would do it. But at least in that case, like I think that trait fit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I see that too, because like, for example, my best friend's husband, who's also one of my good friends, he's an ESTP, and he is like, I mean, when my friend was pregnant, like she just had a baby, he didn't gain weight like most people do. And like he's there for her, and he's like very committed to her, but
Hmm.
he also works out all the time. Like he keeps up with himself, which I find very admirable because not everybody's that way.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. And like I don't always have the will to work out. So
Yeah,
people like that who like are really motivated really help me. So
yeah, I agree. That's why I'm making myself wake up early and go to the gym.
yeah, 4 o'clock, damn.
I've extended the time a little bit more. I'm starting to more wake up around like 4:35. Like
Hmm.
more closer to like 4:45 ish, because I just, well, first of all, it's just like more of out of practicality in the way that like I know that I'm not, well, it's more sensibility because I'm, so the gym opens at 5. If I wake
Hmm.
up at 4, there's a good chance that I'm going to make an excuse to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So
If it's
I try to do it as
4:45 or
close to,
whatever you said, then like you can go directly to the gym.
yes.
Hmm.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to call it a video and we can maybe talk a little
Yeah,
bit more
even though
after?
this went way longer than I meant for it to.
Yeah,
But
and
oh well.
we could honestly probably have another 30-hour discussion, but that would be
Yeah, we could.
overwhelming.
Just like that will be it. Instead of me get off YouTube, we'll just continue until like we both like either die or whatever.
Yeah, we
We
can
can
do it
even
for
have
charity.
bedpans under our stuff
Or no, we
and
can
like
just take
have
it
our
take it in the
whoever.
take it
What?
we can take the phone in the bathroom with us, right? Like
No,
I won't
we just,
judge.
well, true. I mean, yeah, we can just, yeah, while someone's going to the bathroom, someone else can just entertain. Like I could just say, "Hey, take it away," and go to the bathroom, then come back, get some food, come back. We could just make this a marathon. We could take shifts because,
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then we can have like 8 hours overlapping, but like we can like go to bed and we can do this until we've like raised $1 million for like starving children in some
oh
poor
my gosh.
country. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Google Hangout only lasts for 8 hours, so we'd have to really be strategic with it. We'd have to have multiple Google
Oh
Hangouts
yeah.
going on
And like
at the time.
alternate between them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That might be a bit much. But I've enjoyed this. This was a good interview. Thank you. I was like a little nervous, but I think it went very well.
shouldn't be nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, you guys are gonna see a lot of, whether you want to see his face or not, whether you want to see my face or not, you're gonna
Yeah.
see Andrew around town.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm excited to do some Socionics videos because it really isn't that hard. but there aren't good resources. So I think if we make it simple, then a lot of people can get into it pretty easy. That's
Yeah,
the
so
hope.
we have some other plans apart from that, but I think we'll just leave it at that because we
Mhm.
shouldn't overhype that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, bye, guys.
bye. Bye, guys.